Imagine surviving in the African wilderness without any modern equipment. No GPS, no weather apps, no medicine cabinet. For thousands of years, African tribes discovered something remarkable. The tiny insects around them held the keys to survival, prosperity, and even spiritual wisdom in ways that would astonish the modern world. Long before electronic security systems existed, African tribes developed something far more sophisticated: living alarm networks powered by insects. These tiny creatures became the eyes and ears of entire communities, detecting threats that human senses couldn't perceive. The San people of the Kalahari understood this better than most. They strategically positioned beehives around their settlements, knowing that these territorial insects would react aggressively to any intruder. When a lion or hyena approached during the night, the bees would buzz frantically, creating an unmistakable warning that carried across the village. Even large elephants learned to avoid areas with active hives, giving the San natural barriers against some of Africa's most dangerous animals. But what about threats that moved silently? Maasai warriors discovered the answer in cricket behaviour. These insects chirp constantly throughout the night, creating a steady background chorus. However, crickets are incredibly sensitive to vibrations and movement. When a predator like a leopard stalked through the grass, the crickets would suddenly fall silent. Experienced warriors could pinpoint the location and direction of threats simply by listening to which areas went quiet first. The Bambara farmers of West Africa took this knowledge even further. They learned to read ant behaviour like a living newspaper. When elephants approached their fields, the ants would scatter in chaotic patterns, abandoning their orderly lines. This gave farmers precious time to protect their crops and alert neighbouring villages. Even termite mounds served as early warning systems, with the insects becoming restless when large animals passed nearby. These natural alarm systems created layers of protection that no single guard could provide. While insects served as protectors against immediate dangers, tribes also discovered they could reveal secrets about future threats from the sky and seasons ahead. African tribes learned to read the sky's secrets through the smallest messengers on Earth. Insects, with their incredible sensitivity to atmospheric pressure and humidity changes, became living weather stations that could predict storms, droughts, and seasonal shifts days before they arrived. The Shona people of Zimbabwe mastered this art through termite observation. These industrious insects modify their mound construction based on upcoming weather patterns. Before heavy rains, termites seal certain passages and reinforce tunnel walls, creating structures that can withstand flooding. When the Shona noticed termites frantically building higher mound extensions, they knew significant rainfall was approaching within days. Coastal tribes developed equally sophisticated systems using flying ants. These insects emerge in massive swarms exactly 2 to 3 days before monsoon rains begin. The timing is so precise that farmers could plant their crops with confidence, knowing when the life-giving rains would nourish their seeds. But how do insects know what's coming before humans can detect it? The answer lies in their sensitivity to barometric pressure changes. Beetles become hyperactive before thunderstorms, scurrying to higher ground as they sense dropping air pressure. Butterfly migrations shift dramatically when dry seasons approach, with entire populations moving toward areas where rainfall will be more abundant. Perhaps most dramatically, locust gathering patterns serve as early warning systems for environmental catastrophes. When these insects begin congregating in unusual numbers or locations, it signals major ecosystem changes approaching, droughts, floods, or temperature shifts that will affect the entire region. This weather knowledge became deeply integrated into agricultural cycles, helping tribes plant, harvest, and store food with remarkable precision. Beyond predicting nature's moods, observant tribes learned that insects could serve as living compasses, guiding travellers across vast landscapes. African tribes learned to read the sky's secrets through the smallest messengers on Earth. Insects, with their incredible sensitivity to atmospheric pressure and humidity changes, became living weather stations that could predict storms, droughts and seasonal shifts days before they arrived. The Shona people of Zimbabwe mastered this art through termite observation. These industrious insects modify their mound construction based on upcoming weather patterns. Before heavy rains, termites seal certain passages and reinforce tunnel walls, creating structures that can withstand flooding. When the Shona noticed termites frantically building higher mound extensions, they knew significant rainfall was approaching within days. Coastal tribes developed equally sophisticated systems, using flying ants. These insects emerge in massive swarms exactly 2 to 3 days before monsoon rains begin. The timing is so precise that farmers could plant their crops with confidence, knowing when the life-giving rains would nourish their seeds. But how do insects know what's coming before humans can detect it? The answer lies in their sensitivity to barometric pressure changes. Beetles become hyperactive before thunderstorms, scurrying to higher ground as they sense dropping air pressure. Butterfly migrations shift dramatically when dry seasons approach, with entire populations moving toward areas where rainfall will be more abundant. Perhaps most dramatically, locust gathering patterns serve as early warning systems for environmental catastrophes. When these insects begin congregating in unusual numbers or locations, it signals major ecosystem changes approaching, droughts, floods, or temperature shifts that will affect the entire region. This weather knowledge became deeply integrated into agricultural cycles, helping tribes plant, harvest, and store food with remarkable precision. Beyond predicting nature's moods, observant tribes learned that insects could serve as living compasses, guiding travellers across vast landscapes. When you're travelling across thousands of miles of seemingly identical landscape, how do you find your way home? African tribes discovered that insects provided the most reliable navigation system ever created, offering directional guidance that worked in any weather, day or night. The Kalahari Bushmen developed remarkable expertise with dung beetles. These insects roll their precious dung balls in perfectly straight lines away from the source, always moving toward the same cardinal direction. These invisible pathways became reliable guides for human travellers, with experienced nomads able to identify specific ant trails that led to oases, trading posts, or safe passage through dangerous terrain. Termite mounds offered another navigation tool that many tribes learned to exploit. These structures consistently align themselves with magnetic north, creating natural compass points scattered across the landscape. The Shona people became experts at reading termite mound orientations, using them to maintain direction during cloudy days when sun positioning became unreliable. Butterfly migration patterns revealed seasonal travel routes, while bee flight paths showed the directions toward flowering plants and food sources. Experienced travellers learned to read these aerial highways, following insect traffic patterns that led to resources and favourable destinations. Once tribes mastered reading insects for direction, they discovered these same creatures could lead them to life's most precious resource. In the African wilderness, water means the difference between life and death. Tribes across the continent developed extraordinary skills in following insects to locate hidden water sources, turning these tiny creatures into living dowsing rods that could detect moisture from miles away. Desert tribes like the Tuareg became masters of fly tracking. Certain fly species never venture more than a few hundred yards from water sources, creating reliable indicators of nearby oases. When Tuareg scouts spotted these specific flies during desert crossings, they knew fresh water lay within walking distance. But which flies could be trusted? Experience taught them to distinguish between species that indicated clean, drinkable water versus those that gathered around stagnant, potentially dangerous pools. Ethiopian highlanders developed similar expertise with bee behaviour. Bees require water for their hives and consistently fly in straight lines between their colonies and water sources. By carefully observing bee flight patterns, especially during early morning hours when water gathering activity peaked, highland communities could trace these aerial highways back to hidden mountain springs and seasonal streams. Mosquito concentrations provided another reliable water detection method. These insects breed exclusively in standing water, making their presence a guaranteed sign of moisture. However, experienced travellers learned to read mosquito behaviour patterns. Dense swarms often indicated larger water bodies, while scattered populations suggested smaller, temporary pools. Certain beetle species and ant colonies also served as water indicators, thriving only in areas with consistent moisture access. Seasonal variations added complexity to this knowledge, as insect water-seeking behaviours changed dramatically between wet and dry periods. After securing water, the next essential need was sustenance, and insects themselves provided a remarkably nutritious solution. African tribes discovered that insects offered some of the richest protein sources available in nature, often surpassing traditional game meat in nutritional density. A handful of termites contains more protein per ounce than beef, while requiring far less energy and resources to obtain. The Shona people perfected the art of harvesting flying termites during the rainy season. When these winged reproductives emerged from their mounds after heavy rains, entire communities mobilized with specially designed collection baskets and light traps. The timing had to be perfect. These termites only flew for a few hours after emergence, creating brief windows of abundance that could sustain families for months. Different insects required unique harvesting approaches. Grasshoppers were collected during cool morning hours when cold temperatures made them sluggish and easy to gather by hand. Caterpillars were plucked from specific trees during peak feeding seasons, while protein-rich grubs were carefully extracted from rotting logs using traditional digging tools. Preparation methods varied dramatically between species. Termites were often roasted alive, creating crunchy, nutty-flavoured snacks. Grasshoppers required leg and wing removal before cooking, then were fried in their own natural oils. Larger caterpillars were gutted and boiled, while grubs could be eaten raw or cooked depending on the species. These harvesting activities became important cultural events. Communities celebrated termite emergence with festivals that combined practical food gathering with social bonding. Children learned identification skills and harvesting techniques through hands-on participation, ensuring knowledge transfer across generations. Preservation techniques included smoking, drying and grinding insects into nutritious flour that could be stored for lean seasons. Beyond nourishment, tribes discovered that certain insects possessed remarkable healing properties that could treat ailments and restore health. Traditional African healers understood that nature's pharmacy extended far beyond plants and herbs. Insects provided powerful medicines that could treat everything from infected wounds to chronic pain, often proving more effective than conventional remedies available to their communities. Honey became the cornerstone of insect-based medicine across Africa. Its natural antimicrobial properties made it invaluable for treating wounds, burns and infections. Traditional healers applied raw honey directly to injuries, creating protective barriers that prevented bacterial growth while promoting rapid healing. The enzymes in honey actually helped clean wounds by breaking down dead tissue, accelerating recovery in ways that amazed early colonial observers. But honey was just the beginning. Certain ant species provided controlled pain relief through carefully administered stings. Healers learned to position specific ants on patients suffering from arthritis or chronic joint pain, allowing the insects to inject natural compounds that reduced inflammation and provided lasting relief. The dosage and timing required precise knowledge passed down through generations of medical practitioners. Butterfly chrysalis preparations offered treatments for various skin conditions. Healers ground dried chrysalises into powders that were mixed with plant oils to create healing salves for rashes, scars, and persistent skin problems. These preparations contained compounds that modern science has only recently begun to understand. The healing process often extended beyond physical treatment into spiritual realms. Certain insects held symbolic power in traditional healing ceremonies, representing transformation, renewal, and connection with ancestral spirits. Patients received psychological healing through rituals that incorporated specific insects as spiritual guides and protective symbols. Preventive medicine also relied heavily on insect products, with regular consumption of certain insect preparations believed to boost immunity and maintain health. While insects healed people, farmers discovered they could also heal the land by protecting crops from destructive pests. African farmers developed sophisticated biological warfare systems using insects as their primary weapons against crop-destroying pests. Rather than fighting nature, they learned to harness its own predator-prey relationships, creating self-sustaining agricultural defences that protected harvests without harmful chemicals. West African farmers became experts at deploying praying mantises as living pesticides. These voracious hunters could eliminate hundreds of caterpillars per day, systematically clearing fields of the larvae that devastated crops. Farmers learned to carefully time mantis introductions, releasing them when caterpillar populations peaked, but before the damage became irreversible. Grain storage presented different challenges that required specialised solutions. Certain wasp species became invaluable allies in protecting stored harvests from moths and other grain-eating insects. Farmers encouraged these wasps to nest near storage areas by providing suitable breeding sites and food sources. The wasps would patrol constantly, eliminating moths before they could lay eggs in precious grain supplies. Maintaining natural balance required deep understanding of seasonal cycles and insect behaviour patterns. Successful farmers knew exactly when to introduce beneficial predators and how to create environments that supported their reproduction. This involved strategic companion planting, growing specific flowers and herbs that attracted helpful insects while repelling harmful ones. The knowledge extended to complex ecological relationships. Farmers understood that ladybugs controlled aphids, that certain beetles eliminated root-damaging grubs, and that spiders provided general pest control throughout growing seasons. They created nature's most durable and versatile construction materials. From termite saliva that hardened into cement-like adhesives to waterproof waxes that sealed structures against the harshest weather, these tiny architects provided the building blocks for lasting homes and storage facilities. Termite mounds offered abundant supplies of superior construction clay. The saliva-mixed soil that termites used to build their towering structures possessed remarkable properties. It dried harder than regular clay, resisted water damage, and maintained structural integrity for decades. Tribes across Africa learned to harvest this processed clay during specific seasons when termite activity peaked, ensuring optimal material quality. The harvesting process required careful timing and technique. Builders would break open sections of active termite mounds, collecting the saliva-enriched clay while it remained workable. This material was then mixed with additional local clay and formed into building blocks that created walls stronger than those made from unprocessed soil. Beeswax became essential for waterproofing applications. Builders sealed roof joints, window frames, and water storage containers with carefully applied wax coatings that prevented leaks and weather damage. The natural antimicrobial properties of beeswax also help protect wooden structural elements from rot and insect damage. Silk from various insects provided strong binding materials for construction projects. Spider silk, collected during early morning hours when dew made the strands visible, was twisted into remarkably strong cords used to lash structural elements together. Certain caterpillar species produce silk that was harvested and processed into binding threads for thatching and framework assembly. Insect nest architecture itself inspired human building techniques. with many tribes copying the ventilation systems and structural designs they observed in insect colonies. Beyond basic construction, skilled craftspeople transformed insects into sophisticated tools and implements for daily use. Skilled African craftspeople looked at insects and saw a complete toolkit waiting to be harvested. The hard, sharp shells of beetles became precision-cutting instruments, while delicate insect parts were fashioned into needles and awls that rivaled any metal implement. Rhinoceros beetle horns provided some of the finest cutting tools available. Craftspeople would carefully remove these horn-like projections, then grind and shape them into scrapers, small knives, and engraving tools. The natural curve and hardness of beetle horns made them perfect for detailed work like carving bone ornaments or preparing hides. But what about tools requiring extreme precision? Grasshopper legs offered an unexpected solution. The thin, rigid leg segments could be processed into remarkably sharp sewing needles. Craftspeople would remove the legs, clean them thoroughly, then carefully sharpen one end while creating an eye at the other. These needle-like tools proved especially valuable for working with delicate materials. Wing cases from large beetles served as miniature containers and measuring vessels. Their natural waterproof properties made them ideal for storing small amounts of precious materials like pigments, medicines, or seeds. Some tribes developed entire sets of graduated wing case containers for precise measurement and storage. Spider silk collection required extraordinary patience and skill. Craftspeople would gather silk strands during early morning hours, carefully twisting multiple threads together to create fishing lines stronger than plant fibers. These silk lines could land fish that would break conventional plant-based fishing equipment. The most sophisticated tools combined multiple insect materials, beetle shell blades attached to wooden handles with silk bindings, or composite needles featuring different insect parts for specific applications. From practical tools, artistic tribes discovered insects could be transformed into beautiful materials for clothing and decoration. African textile artisans discovered that insects could provide some of the finest fibers and most vibrant colors available in nature. Wild moths produced silk that rivaled anything found in Asia, while other insects created dyes that produced colors impossible to achieve with plant materials alone. Indigenous moth species across Africa spun cocoons containing remarkable silk fibers. Unlike domesticated silkworms, these wild moths created stronger, more textured silk with unique properties that made it ideal for specific applications. Tribal textile workers learned to identify the best cocoon-producing species and time their collection perfectly. Too early, and the silk remained underdeveloped. Too late, and the emerging moths would damage the valuable fibers. Processing these cocoons required specialized knowledge passed down through generations. Artisans would first soften the cocoons in warm water, then carefully unwind the continuous silk threads that could stretch for hundreds of yards. The natural adhesive holding cocoons together was dissolved using traditional plant extracts, allowing the precious fibers to be separated without damage. But how did tribes create the brilliant colors that adorned their finest textiles? Certain insects produced dyes that created stunning reds, purples, and gold tones. Cochineal insects yielded deep crimson colors, while other species provided metallic sheens that seemed to glow in sunlight. The dyeing process involved crushing specific insects at precise life stages, then treating the fibers with traditional mordants that locked the colors permanently into the silk. Weaving techniques developed specifically for insect fibers created distinctive patterns and textures unique to these materials. The delicate nature of insect silk required gentler handling and specialized looms, resulting in fabrics with exceptional drape and luster. These beautiful textiles often served as canvases for even more elaborate decorative practices using insects themselves. African artists transformed the human body into living galleries using insects as both pigments and ornaments. The most elaborate body decorations combined crushed insect paints with actual insect parts, creating stunning displays that celebrated both natural beauty and cultural identity. Creating vibrant body paints required precise knowledge of which insects produced the most brilliant colours. Certain beetles yielded deep metallic blues and greens when crushed and mixed with plant oils, while butterfly wings created shimmering gold and silver tones that caught light dramatically. The timing of insect collection proved crucial. Beetles harvested during specific seasons produced more intense pigments than those gathered at other times. Beetle shells and butterfly wings became treasured jewellery components. Artisans learned to preserve these delicate materials using traditional techniques involving plant extracts and careful drying processes. The iridescent wing cases of large beetles were shaped into earrings, while butterfly wings were incorporated into elaborate headdresses that sparkled with every movement. Traditional cosmetic preparations extended beyond simple pigments. Honey mixed with crushed flower petals created skin conditioning treatments, while beeswax formed the base for protective lip balms and hairstyling compounds. These preparations served both aesthetic and practical purposes, protecting skin from harsh environmental conditions. Ceremonial body decoration reached extraordinary heights during seasonal festivals. Some rituals involved incorporating live insects into temporary body art. Harmless beetles carefully attached to create moving ornaments, or trained ants allowed to walk across painted designs. These practices required exceptional skill to ensure both human safety and insect welfare. Insect-based perfumes utilized aromatic compounds extracted from specific species, creating unique scents that identified tribal affiliations and personal status. These decorative practices often held deeper meaning, connecting to spiritual beliefs where insects served as messengers between worlds. In countless African cultures, insects bridged the gap between the physical and spiritual realms, carrying messages from ancestors and revealing divine will through their behaviours and appearances. These tiny creatures held profound religious significance that shaped tribal ceremonies, beliefs, and daily spiritual practices. Certain elements. Young people undergoing coming-of-age rituals would be exposed to controlled insect encounters that tested their courage and connection to natural forces. Some ceremonies required participants to remain motionless, while harmless insects crawled across their bodies, demonstrating spiritual discipline and harmony with nature. The metamorphosis of insects held extraordinary spiritual meaning for African tribes. The transformation from caterpillar to butterfly represented the soul's journey from earthly existence to spiritual transcendence. This powerful symbolism influenced funeral rites, healing ceremonies, and seasonal celebrations that honoured the cyclical nature of life. Honey and beeswax became essential elements in religious rituals. Sacred fires burned beeswax candles during important ceremonies, while honey offerings were presented to ancestral spirits and deities. The sweet substance represented divine blessing and spiritual nourishment that connected the living with higher powers. Tribal storytelling traditions featured insects as wise teachers, powerful spirits, and heroic characters who helped humans navigate moral challenges and spiritual mysteries. The spiritual value placed on certain insects naturally evolved into systems where they became valuable trade commodities. Across Africa, the reverence for insects translated directly into economic systems, where these creatures became standardized forms of currency and trade goods. Entire commercial networks developed around insect availability, creating sophisticated economies that fluctuated with seasonal insect cycles and regional species variations. Certain beetle shells served as reliable currency units in many tribal societies. The glossy, durable wing cases of specific beetle species were collected, cleaned, and standardized into denominations based on size and quality. These natural coins offered advantages over other trade items. They were lightweight, didn't spoil, and their distinctive appearance made counterfeiting nearly impossible. Honey and bee products formed the backbone of extensive trade networks that connected distant tribes across the continent. Coastal communities traded salt and fish inland for precious honey, while mountain tribes exchanged metal tools for beeswax and royal jelly. These trade relationships required careful timing, as bee product availability peaked during specific flowering seasons. Seasonal economic cycles revolved around insect harvesting periods. Flying termite emergences created temporary economic booms as communities rapidly collected and processed these protein-rich insects for trade. Similarly, butterfly wing collection seasons brought traders from hundreds of miles away, creating bustling seasonal markets. Value hierarchies reflected both practical utility and cultural significance. Raw honey commanded higher prices than processed beeswax, while rare butterfly wings from specific species could purchase livestock or land rights. Skilled negotiators understood these complex value systems, knowing exactly when to trade and which products brought maximum returns. Intertribal commerce often involved elaborate gift exchanges and ceremonial trading protocols that strengthened political relationships alongside economic ones. Beyond trade value, skilled hunters developed sophisticated techniques using insects to track and capture game. African hunters elevated insect observation into a precise tracking science that could reveal game animal locations, movements and conditions with remarkable accuracy. These tiny creatures became living trail markers that guided hunters to their quarry across vast wilderness areas. Fly patterns provided some of the most reliable hunting intelligence available. Experienced hunters learned to distinguish between different fly species and their behaviours. Certain flies gathered around fresh animal kills, while others indicated the presence of wounded animals. By following fly concentrations and movement patterns, hunters could locate carcasses from miles away, often reaching fresh kills before scavengers arrived. Specific insects developed symbiotic relationships with particular game animals. Cattle egrets followed buffalo herds, while certain tick species appeared only on specific antelope types. Hunters used this knowledge to track animal movements across seasons, knowing that finding particular insects meant their preferred prey was nearby. But how did hunters use insects for active hunting strategies? Timing hunting expeditions around insect activity cycles proved incredibly effective. During flying termite emergences, ground-dwelling animals became distracted and easier to approach. Similarly, when bee swarms moved through areas, larger animals avoided those regions, concentrating in predictable locations. Insect sounds provided natural camouflage for approaching prey. Hunters learned to move during periods of high insect activity, using the buzzing and chirping to mask their footsteps and breathing. Some tribes even created artificial insect-like sounds to attract curious animals within range. Traditional lure making incorporated insect attractants and pheromones. Hunters collected specific insects that attracted their target species, using these as bait or scent trails that drew animals into carefully prepared hunting areas. The final mastery came in developing advanced techniques to preserve these valuable insect resources for future use. African tribes developed sophisticated preservation systems that transformed seasonal insect abundance into year-round resources, ensuring survival during lean periods when fresh insects became scarce. These time-tested techniques allowed communities to store protein, materials and medicines for months or even years without spoilage. Smoking and drying provided the most reliable methods for preserving edible insects. Termites, grasshoppers and caterpillars were arranged on specially constructed drying racks positioned over low-burning fires. The combination of heat and smoke removed moisture while creating protective barriers against bacteria and other insects that could spoil the stored food. Properly dried insects retained their nutritional value and could sustain families through entire dry seasons. Bee products required different preservation approaches due to their unique properties. Honey naturally resisted spoilage through its low moisture content and antimicrobial compounds, but proper storage techniques ensured maximum longevity. Traditional containers made from gourds or clay vessels were sealed with beeswax to create airtight environments that preserved honey's quality for years. Seasonal timing proved crucial for optimal preservation results. Insects collected during peak condition periods contained higher protein and fat content that improved preservation success. Experienced preservers knew exactly when each species reached maximum nutritional density, timing their collection and processing activities accordingly. Knowledge transfer systems ensured these critical skills passed reliably between generations. Young people learned preservation techniques through hands-on participation, starting with simple drying methods and gradually mastering complex processes for different insect types. Elders supervised this training carefully, sharing subtle techniques that could mean the difference between successful preservation and spoiled stores. Storage containers and environments were carefully maintained to prevent contamination, with traditional methods for detecting and preventing spoilage that kept precious insect resources safe until needed.